I always had imposter syndrome about not having an MBA and not having gone to a business school. But running a company and getting slapped so many times and falling and rising and fall, that is my MBA. That is like better than any MBA I could have done. And then going through the exit and the DD, that was my PhD.
Welcome to How to Help a Few Billion People. My name is Mark Horshowski, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we feature entrepreneurs who prioritize purpose and impact above profits. Now, one quick thing before we jump into today's episode. Our goal is to add real value. If you have questions, if you have thoughts of things that we could have explored in the interview that would have made this more valuable to you, please let us know in the comments below or shoot me an email at mark@helpingbillions.org. And maybe while you're doing that, one quick favor. We're getting incredible stories from our entrepreneurs, and the best way that we can help them is help their stories get discovered. And a great way to help that discovery is by liking this YouTube video or giving a 5-star review in the podcast feed that you're listening to. But that's enough about that. I can't wait to tell you about Rama Kayyali, the co-founder and CEO of Little Thinking Minds that 1 year ago was acquired by Seesaw Learning. In this episode, we're going to talk about how a journalist from the Arab world built a concept, first a kind of side hobby on a VHS tape, scaled that to DVDs, to YouTube, then apps, and then a B2B business model that sold into private schools, educational institutions, and even the government. It's an incredible story about how Rama and her team built an organization improving educational outcomes for 500,000 students. And even though they've been at this for 20 years now, it really feels like they are just getting started. Literacy poverty is, especially in the Arab-speaking world, affects almost 500 million people, and 100 million of those are under the age of 18. And the Little Thinking Mind product, which is now a part of Seesaw Learning, is addressing all of that globally. And beyond the business success here, I just want to stop for a moment and talk about how wonderful of a human Rama is. In our podcast, we absolutely talk about some business fundamentals, some tips for fundraising, some tips for B2B sales, some tips for leading through pivots. But we also talk about the personal side, not only scaling a business, but scaling a business and then being acquired. And there's a point in this podcast where we start talking about the importance of just like the personal emotions, acceptance, joy, emotional regulation, how to calm oneself down, how to surrender, how to just live the journey, and how to have more gratitude. And it's really this human side of the episode in the latter half that really just struck me as a conversation that we don't have enough as entrepreneurs. So without further ado, I can't wait to introduce you to Rama Kayyali of Little Thinking Minds and Seesaw Learning. And please, I hope you enjoy this episode. Rama Kayyali, welcome to the Helping Billions podcast. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Mark.
So Rama, I really want to jump in because I think, when we met 2 years ago at the Change Now conference, I was immediately struck by not only your organization and your mission, but the level of scale that you brought it up to and the point of time that you were on the journey. And it's been really fun to follow you since. But before we kind of jump into those things, which includes, an acquisition from a larger education organization, I'd love to just start with like your own personal story. Like what got you into starting a edtech enterprise about 20 years ago, right?
Yes. Okay, so by education and by passion, my intention was to go into documentary filmmaking, and I studied journalism, and then I went on into production and filmmaking in the U.S. And the idea was I wanted to come back to the region. I live in Amman, Jordan, so I come from the Arab world, and I was very upset. Like I was very frustrated by the negative stories that keep coming out of the region, not just for Western audiences, but also for Arab audiences. And I wanted to focus on stories of innovation, of inspiration, of people who have defeated odds and have, there's so many wonderful stories happening in the region, and we tend to focus on the negative. So I'm very passionate about where I come from, and I think, there's a lot that we need to, that needs to be told about a region. So that was my journey. So it was never a plan to open a company, to start a company, to be an entrepreneur. I had no business background. My family, my father was a physician, a pediatrician, and my mother was a homemaker. So it wasn't like businesses in my blood and in our family. But what happened was, when my son was born, I started to notice that there was a huge lack of Arabic language literacy tools for children his age. And that's when a friend of mine who was living in London at the time, she came to me, and she came from the same background, and she said, in London there's so much content in Spanish and Japanese and French and English, but there's nothing in Arabic, and even in our region there's nothing in Arabic. So that's when we started to create films, and actually our first product was a VHS tape.
Amazing. I love that.
20 And so that's what we started with, a VHS tape, and we did a movie about animals, like in our region, as opposed to our kids watching videos about otters and llamas and and things it's so foreign to them. We wanted local content, and so we started creating short videos for kids, and then the idea, to tell you the story, we decided we got our kids, we plopped them in the garden, we filmed them, their friends, we asked our moms and aunts, like, whatever the nursery rhymes they used to sing to us. We worked with a local animator, a local puppeteer, and that was our first pilot. And we said, okay, let's show it in a movie theater, just for fun. We'll tell our friends and their kids, and we distributed some flyers. And there was no social media then, 20 years ago, not really, not as it is today. And we expected a few family and friends to come, and 300 people ended up showing up. And that's when we knew we were solving a problem. That's when we knew there was a pain that mothers had. And what happened for the next 7 or 8 years, it was a lifestyle business. Both of us had other jobs. We were the VHS videos became DVDs, and we were distributing the DVDs physically to Virgin megastores around the Arab world. Of course, we met with a lot of obstacles, from piracy to shipping costs to, just so much. But then our clips started showing on YouTube, and they started picking up traffic, and we ended up having something like 40 million views on one of our clips. And that's when we thought, okay, this can be really big if we go digital. And then in 2012, we approached a local incubator accelerator called Oasis 500, modeled after 500 startups in the US. And we went through like a boot camp where we learned about how to build financial projections and how to work on a marketing plan and a go-to-market strategy. And that's when really, I would say, the company was born. And then that's a whole other story of that was a whole journey, another 15-year journey. That took us into building, scaling, fundraising for Little Thinking Minds, and eventually exiting Little Thinking Minds.
So cool to hear about. And I want to hear about the second part of that journey as well. But even kind of going back, and obviously this was a couple years ago, but even going from one kind of side project, right, to then, let's do another one and another one and another one, right? You're a mother, you're working, right? All of these. Like, what gave you the motivation to keep going with this as like this side project, especially with everything that life has to throw at us?
I always knew that I wanted to make a difference, and I always knew that no matter what I do, I wanted it to have impact. So impact was always a driver for me. We have a lot of problems in the region, as everywhere around the world, and we can, if we focus on how can we solve the pains that exist, we can all make a difference. So for us, the pain we were solving is Arabic language literacy, and specifically Arabic learning poverty. So in the Middle East or in the Arab world, 60 to 70% suffer or struggle with learning poverty, according to the World Bank, which means that they read below reading levels. So by the time a child reaches 10 years old, he's actually or she's actually reading below grade level. And it's a very, long problem. I mean, the main reason is, 22. There are 22 Arab countries, around 450 million Arabs in the world, and although we all speak Arabic, but we all have different accents. So if I am a child from Dubai, I will not necessarily understand a child in Morocco, or in Yemen, or in Iraq. So we have different accents, and so we all speak Arabic, but we don't necessarily read or write it well. And that is the language you need for literacy, for business world, for expression. And when you don't master your mother tongue, it's very hard to excel in other languages or to do well at school. And this leads to large dropout rates in public schools, whereas in private schools, the focus is a lot on English, because a lot of parents want their kids to go to international schools like myself, and then they go study abroad because they want them, to have good jobs when they come back, and the business world's all in English, etc. And so the Arabic is lost. Children end up growing with very poor language skills. Public school children end up dropping out or very weak. Private school kids end up weak in Arabic. And this also leads to a lot of other issues, including identity issues, including socioeconomic and political issues that leads to migration, because kids can't find work here and then they want to go to Europe. And I mean, the socio-political ramifications are huge. So we wanted to focus on, okay, what can we create tools to make Arabic cool and fun and interesting and engaging and interactive. And so that's how we are, tackling the pain. And we know that, we can't do it alone. It takes a village. So we're one piece of the puzzle. But that's our role in this, in trying to address this struggle.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and I mean, so foundational, right? Like all learning stems from this. Well, not all learning, but the majority of things that we learn and consume as humans, right, is through literacy. And did you say? And sorry, remind me the number. Over how many? Like, what is the reach of the audience here? You said over 100 million.
We reach 500,000 students, but there are 450 million people who live in the Arab world. There are around 100 plus million children under the age of 18. So we are addressing, and of course, we have the issue of displacement, wars, conflict. So you have a lot of children who are out of school, and so they're very behind. So we are trying also to bring children up to their reading level.
Wow. And so you're doing this as as a side project, right? You're creating these videos. I love it. These like VHS videos, right? And then you learn about this accelerator program, and I didn't like uncover this in my own notes, but via Moving Worlds, we actually had a partnership with Oasis 500. It would have been shortly after 2012, maybe closer to 2014, 2015, I think, where we were supporting some of the same startups, and with a couple other accelerators, in the region as well. So anyway, it was really fun to hear that name kind of pop up. But even that motion of then like, okay, I'm going to apply to an accelerator, I'm going to turn this. Right. You could have also just continued as a side project. You could have turned to philanthropy to try and fund this. What led you in that direction? Why try and solve this via business model?
At that point, we were no longer doing VHS, we were doing DVDs. And when we started to see our DVDs being sold for $1 in the black market in Lebanon, in Egypt, in Jordan, when we started to see our clips on YouTube reaching millions of views, we knew that we were touching a nerve. We knew that there was a genuine pain and we were solving the pain. So what made us keep going with this, despite so many hurdles along the way, which we will tackle, and so many pivots along the way, is that we knew that we were onto something. But we just, the issue we had for many, many years was product market fit, and we'll talk about it. But why did we go to an incubator accelerator? To be honest, I think sometimes things happen for a reason. The philanthropy road was not open for us. There aren't that many, we didn't know, it wasn't our world. We didn't know how to approach donors. We didn't really understand. At that point, we only had DVDs. So we figured that if we take our content digitally and we work with Oasis, which focus on tech companies, and we work on a digital plan, we can transcend borders. We can reach children easily. We can, start to be able to provide more personalized content, more differentiated content. So we thought, for us, it made sense to go down this path. And of course, at the beginning, we were very nervous. We had major imposter syndrome. What are we doing? We're filmmakers, and now suddenly we're with all of these entrepreneurs, and they're all tech geeks, and we have no idea what they're talking about. So we had to really catch up very, very quickly. But it was a big lesson that sometimes it's not really, resilience, passion, drive, and focus. And yes, it's not a straight road, but we were able to get there.
Well, I want to, you mentioned it a couple times. There were a couple pivots. So maybe let's go through the second half of this journey. So,
Sure.
so post Oasis, you decide to go all in on this. You get into this accelerator. Yeah, then bring us from that point to today.
So we get into this accelerator on our pitch day, our demo day. Actually, the King of Jordan happened to be there, which was really cool. So we were pitching in front of him. We had all these investors in the room, and we were able to fundraise seed investment of $100,000, which is like nothing now. Now a seed investment is $1 million, but then that was a big deal.
Right.
And we said, okay, we're now going to start creating apps for parents, B2C apps. Focused on animals, shapes, colors, alphabets, and all of that, like early literacy skills. Of course, we didn't fundraise that much, so we outsourced our tech to a company in Pakistan, and it was just my co-founder and myself. And so our first pivot was going from DVDs to B2C apps. And we started to promote our apps. This is 2012 to 2015. At the time, the Arab world, parents we weren't very banked. So it wasn't easy to buy apps online. We didn't now at the click of the button, you can, through Apple Pay, you download an app. But then you had to have a credit card, you had to have the bank it was complicated and it wasn't widespread. So we had really, really beautiful apps, but we weren't reaching our audience. And at the same time, the YouTube videos kept growing and growing and growing, but yet our apps were stagnant. And that's, so that was our second kind of where we had to sit and say, maybe it's time to close shop. Maybe, we tried, we gave it a go. We have these clips that are doing great on YouTube. We did these apps, we did some fundraising. Maybe we need to close shop. At the same time, our kids got older, and we started to see at school in primary schools and primary years, middle years, they have these amazing apps in English, reading apps, and they were, eating these books up. And we started to think, why isn't there anything in Arabic for schools, for students? And that's when we realized maybe we're after the wrong client. Maybe it's the wrong, we need to target schools versus parents. And so we decided to pilot a small, very basic reading app that had Arabic books, and to pivot into a B2B company. But we didn't want to fundraise yet because we weren't sure if this was going to work. We needed to have a proof of concept. And so we decided to go down a very unfamiliar route, which is going through donor-based projects. So there was a grand challenge for development launched by USAID, focused on innovation in literacy, called All Children Reading. And one of my very, very good friends works in this space. And she was telling me, why don't we apply for a grant? We'll do a proposal and try to see maybe we can launch a pilot in public schools in Jordan. So we were doing the tech and the content, and she was doing the program design and implementation. We applied and we were selected. We were one of 13 companies selected globally. And through the funding, for 1 year, we got funding to build a reading platform for grade 2 students. We talked to regional Arab publishers, because one of the things parents kept saying, there's no content in the Arab world, there are no books for children. It's not true, actually. There are amazing books for kids, but they're expensive, they're hard to get here. The books from Egypt or Lebanon, you won't find them in a bookstore in Jordan. So we thought, why don't we digitize these books and put them on a platform? So we contacted a few publishers and said, we have experiment we want to run. Are you willing to kind of, take a bet on us? And we created this platform, and we launched, and we talked to the Ministry of Education in Jordan, and we worked with local partners. So it was a public-private partnership to get tablets. And we got tablets with earphones. We had charging stations. We had to lock we put them in a safe space so they don't get broken. Because the public schools here, when you go to the libraries, the books are all torn up. Kids don't go to the library a lot, and the computers are not in great shape. So we wanted to make sure the tablets are safe. So we provided all that to schools. We ran a pilot, and part of the program was an impact evaluation. So we had the company from San Francisco called School Research. They came to Jordan in September, and they did like an early grade reading assessment for the students, and for the control and treatment group. And then they came back again in May, so 9 months later. And during the year, the kids had access to these tablets twice a week, reading for 45 minutes. And so comparing treatment to control, the results were significant. They were statistically significant. We were one of the best results from the 13 projects that were there.
Wow.
And students improved by around 30% when you control the students who use our platform versus business as usual, which is regular classroom instruction. Yeah. And that's when we knew we were, this is it. We finally have product market fit. We finally have found the product that we can now take to schools. And my partner Lamia was living in Dubai, and that made a big difference also. So we started to experiment with private schools in Dubai. And Dubai has the largest number of private schools per capita globally. And there's a big problem when it comes to Arabic, especially because Arabic is compulsory even for expats. And Dubai has so many expats there. So if you're German, you're French, you have to learn Arabic. And so the schools started eating it up. We saw, we had clients, we couldn't keep up with the amount of demand there was. And it was such an amazing feeling, because then it was like, oh my God, we now know what we need to build. We now know what is the gap that needed to be filled. And that's when we started fundraising, and we raised our Series A from regional investors. At the time, we raised around 2.5 million. Again, then that was Series A. Sure. Now it's seed. Yeah. And we raised from investors in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and Jordan. And we went from a team of 4 to a team of 70 in 2 years. We established offices in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Cairo. And Jordan was the headquarters. So the tech, product, content, marketing team, all in Jordan. But then we had sales offices in these 3 countries. And we started to target private schools in the region. And I mean, today we reach 500,000 students in 10 countries in the region. And our focus also, to go back to impact, is public schools. So it was kind of like a cross-subsidization model. So in order to be sustainable, we had to keep selling to the private schools, the elite private schools, but in return, we went and talked to governments, and we were selling to government in Jordan, we were selling to Qatar, we were selling to Bahrain, and now we're also working with the MOE in Morocco. And so, but because it's volume, the price goes much, sure, becomes much lower, and that's how we were able to remain, a profitable business, a sustainable business, and reach both the private schools and the public schools, and create impact across the board.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been in the room with you and your co-founder when you were seeing that tension, hey, this business model with the private schools, but our own experience and what we're setting out to do. How did you end up moving through that tension, right? Of pursuing this business model, but maybe you were questioning the impact a little bit more. Yeah, how did you end up moving through that?
The word impact is very, it's a big word, because impact could be we're focused on improving learning outcomes regardless of who we're reaching. So even if we're reaching private school kids, we're still improving their Arabic literacy skills. That's impact. Yeah. But really, we wanted that impact, and it's still very important for us, and it's a KPI we measure and we follow. But we wanted also our impact to be to reach children who are in low resource communities, who come from low income backgrounds, who are in public schools, who are possibly refugees, and who need this product really more than even, they need it tremendously. And I think the tension was more actually with our investors. And when we're fundraising, because sometimes they don't want to hear that. They don't like the word social business. Yeah. It scares them. So we never actually called ourselves social entrepreneurs. It was a bit, we were ashamed to say that. So we were like, no, we're a for-profit edtech company, cutting edge, innovative, all of that. But, we also, and we reach all segments. Of course, investors love us reaching the government school sector because that's where the volume is. But they don't like the idea of, refugee communities or, working with NGOs or working with donors. Because also, I get it, to be honest, after being in this space for a while, I get it. It's not sustainable. You cannot build a business on donor funding. And especially now with what happened in the US and all that, the USAID, So thank God that wasn't our business model, because at one point we thought maybe this should be a route. When it was difficult to fundraise, when we met many closed doors, we thought, okay, maybe we need to think of a different way of sustainability. But we thank God we didn't go that road. So I get it, but impact is again a nuanced word. But for us, our impact was focusing on students who come from low resource communities and improving learning outcomes for anyone who's using our platform.
Yeah. You're hitting on like such this like interesting thread that I feel social entrepreneurs have to walk, right? Which is when you try and raise money, if you talk about the social side of things, it becomes much harder. And then if you try and sell, as an example, to government, if you're a for-profit business, it raises all these flags, right? And then if 100%. You try and raise, so you're like, well, what can I be? Like, should I just be pure for-profit and screw everybody? Should I be pure nonprofit and then not have sustainability? Like I think that's one of the big challenges as the sector continues to grow, right? There isn't that kind of wider and more in-depth acceptance of the systemic challenge that we entrepreneurs are trying to solve for, and the importance of some of these like governance and funding models in order to create that. And yeah, it seems like that was alive for you. Does that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I resonate 100%. And you feel like you have to have two personalities. So when you're talking to governments, you have to pretend to be something. And when you're talking to the private sector, you have to pretend to be something else. So it's, as an entrepreneur, you're always wearing different masks anyway. And the story always changes depending on who you're speaking with. So you have to be very agile and, you have to be creative in your storytelling. I feel now, though, this has changed. I feel now there's much more, at least in our region, there's much more appetite to working with startups, because that's where innovation is. Because the systems they have are so archaic, and they've worked, with companies that have gone down because they were donor based, and now they don't exist anymore. Whereas young tech companies are always on the cutting edge, and they're measuring, and they have dashboards, and they have data. So now I feel there's more acceptance. And more appetite for that. But when we were starting out, yes, that definitely was a challenge for us.
Yeah, well, part of I think that acceptance and understanding is because of entrepreneurs like you, right, who helped pave that way. As you were going through this process, actually, one thing I wanted to even go back and I think both pay a compliment, but also kind of highlight that it was very interesting to hear as you've been talking how like first, when you first launched this idea, it was from your own problem, right? And there's lots of entrepreneurship guidance about that, right? People always say like, solve a problem that you have lived, right? And then it seems like with the app, there was a slight move away from that. Like it was still problem adjacent, but you hadn't had as much app experience yourself. And then during your pivot, you really went like back out. Then it was your problem again. Like your kids were in school, they were experiencing this, you saw that gap. But then you did something that to me is what I really want to highlight, which it seems like you went to publishers, you went to schools, you went to students, and you really started to understand not just like one user, but this whole like complicated network that surrounds education. And I'm just wondering, like, did that just come naturally to you? Was there like a framework or a piece of guidance that you were following in order to do that? Because I think it's that type of like system mapping and really in-depth understanding of users that allows social entrepreneurs to break through, and certainly it worked for you. And yeah, I'm just wondering how you came up and realized to go do that.
Honestly, it was intuitive more than anything. So, in order to get, we realized early on that the most important champions for our products are teachers and parents. So we started visiting schools and doing coffee mornings for parents and demoing the app, explaining the app, talking from our own experience as mothers, what we see, the frustration we have. And then with teachers, we know that teachers of Arabic language in the region are very marginalized. So, science teachers have the nice offices and they have all the resources, and math teachers the same. But Arabic literacy, it's not cool. It's not, nobody cares about Arabic. So they have the worst office, they have the oldest curricula, they have very little resources. And so we wanted to empower Arabic language teachers. So our app, we have 3 apps now, but on our app, there's a student dashboard and a teacher dashboard. And on the teacher side, we have hundreds of lesson plans and question banks and worksheets, all to empower these teachers. So they don't have to scrounge and, write their own worksheets or be copy pasting things from the internet and then photocopying them at the secretary's office. So we wanted to empower them. And so we went after the 2 most important personas, the teacher and the parent. And having their buy-in is what helped us retain and get scale, I guess. Yeah.
Skate, yeah. Well, I'm even knowing that some of your background was like in journalism, right? I'm just kind of imagining this like curiosity, this exploring, and then this just like ability to like build rapport and get to know the real needs, right? Even even hosting coffee mornings, right? I think just like being where they are, well, I mean, the results speak for themselves, right? It enabled you to unlock. So, well, let's continue in the journey here. So you're growing, and maybe this is about the time that we met. I kind of remember us having this like, nice dinner. We both shared a capacity building partner, and kind of hearing this like, wow, I've built this organization, I've grown it, and there's a thinking about what's next, and for our remaining time, I'd love to kind of explore that space. Like, what got you to the place of saying it's time to maybe think about what's next for this organization, what's next for me as its leader?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did the exit come to be?
So maybe 2-3 years ago, we had good market traction. We had good market, we had a good number of schools in the Gulf countries, which was our largest market, in Egypt and Lebanon and Jordan. We were scaling to North Africa. We were already working in the public school sector, so we were growing. But at the same time, there were challenges, of course. COVID was a big blow because schools at the time didn't want to focus on Arabic language literacy. They wanted to spend their budgets on Microsoft Teams, and they wanted to spend their budgets on online tools that helped with assessments and helping students have access to online learning. So the budgets were cut drastically. We were very lucky that our investors were very understanding, and they helped us through a very rough period where we decided we're not going to let anybody go. We're going to for sure bootstrap and buckle up, but we're not going to downsize because it was an uncertain world at the time, and it was I think one thing we are is very human also as an organization, and so COVID was a challenge. We got out of COVID, we survived COVID, we were still scaling, but there were many competitors in the market coming in and offering their platforms for free. And sadly, a lot of the private schools are businesses. They're not non-for-profits. They're not, so they want to maximize profitability. And so when competitors come in and say, take this for free, it was tough for us. Like, we were trying to, how do you make this more sticky? How do you add more features? And so you felt at one point that you're on this hamster wheel, and you're growing, but then you're losing customers. It's a leaky bucket. So retention became a challenge. And at the same time, we wanted to invest. AI was coming in. We wanted to focus on differentiation, personalized learning. We had an app for non-native speakers as well that we wanted to scale in Asia, because there's millions in Asia who learn Arabic because they're Muslims. And so we needed to fundraise for that. Fundraising was difficult. It was the beginning of recession. There was a lot of, at least in the region, VCs were becoming much more tight about investing. They were focused a lot more on fintech. They were focused much more on health tech. AI was coming in. And so a company like ours that's been around for a while, that's growing, but not the sexy growth, that didn't have the hockey stick growth. They were all like, we love you. We've been following your story. It's amazing what you're doing. We relate. Our kids have the same problem you guys are tackling, but it's not interesting for us because it's not fast growing. And this is one of the big challenges we have, is there are no impact investors in the Arab world. None. Zero. Yeah. And there was one that we spoke with, and now they're not there anymore. And when I tried to speak with, and in 2017, 18, I was an Eisenhower Fellow. I was in the US for 6 weeks. I traveled the US. I was talking to impact investors there as well. There wasn't a lot of interest in the Arab world. So, the impact investors were focused on South America, on India, on Asia, on Africa, but the Middle East, it wasn't on their radar. And I think the impression is, you have the Gulf countries, you have oil money, that we're not, it's not, I don't know, we were just not interesting, So we struggled to fundraise, and at the same time, we wanted to grow the company, and at the same time, I was getting tired. So many things happened at the same time.
Yeah.
Fundraising was getting tougher and tougher. I have been doing this for 20 years, so I also, I wanted to think, okay, how long can I keep doing this hustle? Because it takes a lot out of you to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Especially in education in the Middle East, an area that's constantly battling so much, as we can see today. And at the same time, I was talking to my board, and they were like, we've always spoken about an exit. Why don't we explore? And there was a lot of talk about mergers and acquisitions. This was the trend. So I said, okay, fine, but I don't know, how do I even do this? How do you sell a company? And they said, companies don't get bought, they get sold. So I was like, what does that even mean? And they said, you need to put yourself out there. You need to, become more of a subject matter expert, to become a speaker, to be out there, to go to conferences, to be seen by people, to meet people in the space. So I had to shift my focus from growing the business, on the ground, to positioning it, as a company ready to become a great partner for anyone who wants to come into the region and scale it. And through doing that, I met someone who focuses on M&A in edtech, specifically based in Spain, with the boots on the ground in South America, in Asia, in the Middle East, and in the US. And he was saying, look, your company is very interesting. You reach 500,000 students. You are in an area of the world that spends a lot of money on education. The spending in the Middle East on education is higher than anywhere else in the world. You are a growing population. So, we are, unlike Europe, which is a shrinking population, we are still a growing population. So a lot of education companies want to come to the region. So, and you don't need to think only US companies. Let's look at Asia, let's look at China, let's look at India, let's look at South America. There's a lot of opportunities out there. And so, this opened my eyes. I was like, okay, fine, I'm open. And we started to meet different companies. I was talking to a company from Dubai, actually, from Abu Dhabi. I was talking to a company from the UK. And then when we met Seesaw Learning, and Seesaw Learning is one of the fastest growing edtechs focused on primary schools in the US, reaching 25 million students globally. We had a conversation, and immediately we clicked. It's just a feeling, it's hard to explain. I mean, in an ideal world, I would have liked to exit to an Arab company, because we're a company that focuses on Arabic language. We're completely homegrown. We're a team of 70% of our team are female. I mean, we're very, very much rooted in our culture and in the Arab world. And I would have loved that. But we didn't find the right fit. The ones we had spoken with, we weren't necessarily on the same page. And when we met Seesaw, I mean, the chemistry was very, very obvious from the beginning. They were definitely very impressed by what we've built and how much we've reached. We felt seen and appreciated. They kept saying, you guys, only this team built all this, only this team reached this much. And so, after getting no's from 40 VCs, and suddenly someone comes and sees you, because sometimes you need to be in the space to understand how much really we've grown and how big we are. Because sometimes people look at their numbers and they're like, it's great, but it's not like, amazing. But it's not about just the numbers. It's not about the bottom line. It's about the impact, the reach, the content we've built, the teachers we've empowered, the students who started to have more confidence in the classroom. I mean, the impact of what we've got ripples to so much more than just what investors see, which is the dollar sign. And we felt that this is something that Seesaw appreciated. And so we started the DD process in September, maybe in November. It took 6 months, basically. And I always say that, I always had imposter syndrome about not having an MBA and not having gone to a business school or not being an Ivy graduate. But running a company and getting slapped so many times and falling and rising and fall, that is my MBA. That is like better than any MBA I could have done. And then going through the exit and the DD, that was my PhD. Because that's a whole other ball game, like this scrutinizing every document, every legal paper, every contract, all your financials. We had 4 offices across the region. I mean, it was a lot. And so many times we thought, okay, this is not going to happen. This is going to fall through. Because, sometimes when you're an entrepreneur and in a startup space, you cut corners, you take shortcuts. Not everything maybe is always done by the book, right? Because you need to be creative in scaling and growing and keep going. And you don't necessarily have all the right work contracts, or you don't necessarily have all the right things set up. So anyway, we had to we were worried at one point, because this is an American company and they definitely want to make sure that everything is clean, and we appreciated that. And thank God, I mean, we got 95% out of 100. There were some things we had to work on, which we did. But I mean, they were very happy in general with the process. And in April last year, exactly a year ago next week, we signed and the exit happened.
I think there's so much to unpack here. Let's go back to the point in time where the conversation really started to get real, right? And you're like, wow, a merger and acquisition, this could really happen, especially having spent so much time building Little Thinking Minds. I'm curious, just for you, personally, in your heart, was this an easy decision? Was it really challenging? And how did you kind of navigate what I'm sure were the emotional, highs and lows of both being excited about the prospect, but then also, what does this mean for my baby? What was that like for you, and how did you move through it?
Yeah, it was definitely something I had to navigate very carefully, because I knew I wanted this, but I also knew it was going to be hard to let go. There are definitely attachment issues. This is my baby. But I knew this was the best thing for the company, because I wanted the company to survive. I wanted the company to grow. I knew that we needed to be part of a much larger organization to be able to scale the way we wanted to scale, to be able to invest in the technology the way we wanted to invest. And one of the things, Seesaw and I talked about is that, and, they were very, they were very gracious. I mean, it was great that they said yes to, is that we keep the brand. So in the MENA region, we're called Seesaw, and then there's a / Little Thinking Minds, because we already have brand equity, and we've already been in the region for 20 years, and people know us, and people stop me on the street and say, "Oh my God, my kids grew up on your DVD," and yeah. So I mean, people know us, and we have that, and we wanted to have the Arabic name next to Seesaw, because we were very proud of having built a company in the Arab world focused on Arabic language that had an Arabic name. And the other thing, Seesaw, where we said we agreed, we were like, look, we don't want to let anybody go, because a lot of times also when you have this acquisition, usually what happens is you shrink the team because there's already another team somewhere else. But on the contrary, they not only wanted to keep the team, they decided to invest in the region, and they've already hired 20 new people to complement our office, and the plan is to hire more. So they're investing in the region, they're investing in the company, they're investing in us, upskilling us and all of that. So it's been great. So I knew this would be the right move for the company. But I had to I always have mentors and coaches, and I do therapy, because running a startup is lonely. There are many challenges that sometimes you don't want to talk about with your friends or your family, because you're going to get them worried. And it's important to have somebody who's objective, who can help you make sense of what's happening in your mind, and like a sounding board, and to just talk about all the different challenges that come up from issues with the team, or issues with confidence, or issues with burnout, and so on and so on. And so one of the things I did focus on at the end with my coach and my therapist was attachment issues, and who am I when I'm not little thinky minds? People here, they don't even call me Rama. They just say, oh, this is little thinky minds. That's my name. This is the woman who built the reading app. This is the company, so my identity became so attached to the company, and I've always been known as CEO of Little Thinky Mind. So of course, every entrepreneur goes through this, and I think it's called founder blues. I think there's a term for it. But honestly, I think after 20 years, I was also so ready and so excited, and I was ready for a new chapter. And now transitioning, I'm now GM of MENA for Seesaw. And so at the beginning, I was talking to the CEO, Matt, and I was like, Matt, what does that mean? Do I need to report to you? Do I need to, every time I want to travel, I need to tell you? Do I need to? Yeah. Because usually I don't ask anyone. I'm the one who makes the decisions. I'm the one, and now that, and a lot of other authorities were taken from me, because the company has been restructured, and so also there was ego issues. But honestly, I don't think I have any of these issues. I was ready, and I was excited, and I was ready for a new chapter, and already I've learned so much in this 1 year, and the team has been great. It has been challenging. It's not easy to get acquired, and it's a completely different culture. It's different. We are literally different cultures, not only company cultures, but American culture, Arab culture. And so there's still teething problems, and still communication and miscommunication that happens, but that has been part of the learning journey. And so I feel that this is my role now, is to learn this and to grow from this.
Yeah. Wow. There's maybe two threads I want to pull on. So one of them was, if you don't mind, right? You mentioned you were working with the therapist, and you were talking about attachment. For you, what were some of the unlocks that helped you kind of move? Because I think even if entrepreneurs don't go through an exit, right, they still are so attached, and I think that identity, right? And then if the business is doing well, they're doing well, and if the business is not doing well, they're not doing well. So I feel regardless of what stage you're on, unpacking that attachment piece is really important to entrepreneurs. Were there any unlocks for you, whether that was guidance provided or realizations you got to on yourself that really helped you, kind of separate you and your ego from, the brand? What worked well for you?
I think I did a lot of work throughout the years. So also I work a lot on myself, self-awareness, and I think this helped me not be as attached. I've learned how to regulate my nervous system. So going into nature, taking some time off, because also as an entrepreneur, at least me, I'm always on my phone. I'm always checking emails. I'm always checking WhatsApps. I'm always on Slack. I go and so I need to find ways. I drive myself crazy. So let alone the people in my, sometimes I see my energy. It's too much. So I need to take a step back. So developing awareness and developing and finding ways to self-regulate is really important. Exercise, being in nature is so important for me. and also also connecting to things that bring me joy. And at one point, I love what I do and I love what I've built, but sometimes it's really exhausting. And there's so many things that are joyous in this world. We kind of become so focused on our venture that we forget that there's a whole world beyond this venture. And so I think this also has helped me. I always connect to this, like what makes me happy, what brings me joy, who are the people I want to be around with, what are the conversations I want to have. So it's more also becoming my friend as opposed to being like just the entrepreneur. And I think what's helped me a lot also is to accept that everything happens for a reason, and it's a journey, and it's not about like being so stressed. It's about enjoying the journey. We get one life, we get one chance, and we need to also find joy in life and try to enjoy the journey. So I'm grateful for all the good and bad that happened, because also even the bad, I've also trained myself to see things that upset me as ways to grow, and things that fail as actually they're not failures, they're just a different direction on the path. And so I think if you harness this positive mindset and trust that there's a reason why things happen, and sometimes surrender, because sometimes we want things to happen our way no matter what. And I really had to learn to surrender. Maybe things are not meant to happen that way. And there's a flow. There's a reason why sometimes things flow and sometimes the door is locked. And so I need to be open to the signs. This is not working. I need to see this is not working. And there are many things I should have seen a long time ago, but I kept at it and I kept after it and I kept insisting on it. And had I just trusted that, that's a sign, switch direction, switch gears and go here. So these are some of the things, like it's a lot of mind inside. It's an inside job.
Yeah, it's so real. The number of times that like getting out in nature has come up on this podcast is like, I don't think it's 100%, but it's there. And I think that like internal work is so critical. And I think as social entrepreneurs, like we have the same business pressure that other entrepreneurs have. But then you also have this like really added weight of the impact story. And that's obviously like the first part of our podcast was talking a lot about that. What is impact? Like there are students, there are families, there are teachers whose lives are measurably better because of the work that you do. And so you're carrying not only this like business pressure, but this like impact pressure. And it seems like you've done a lot. I'm curious, is there anybody you follow? Are there any books that you've read that have really helped you kind of unlock more of this like internal work that you've referenced here, that you think other entrepreneurs should be reading or following, or just a daily practice that you do every day that helps you?
I read a lot of books that are focused on just cultivating inner awareness and surrender and letting go. So this is most of my focused reading, and this sometimes stresses me out because I always feel I'm not reading enough business books and I'm not doing enough business things, but that's what makes me happy. Like this is what calms me down, because I need to learn how to calm myself down. Nobody's going to fix me except for me. And I think also just focusing a lot on gratitude. So, I'm grateful for building this company. I'm grateful for having a wonderful team that I wake up every day and get to see. I'm grateful that a company like Seesaw saw us and decided to acquire us. I'm grateful that, 20 years later, although we had doors shut in our face and we thought about closing the company many times, we stuck it through. We were resilient. We were focused on the pain and the impact, and it got us through. So I'm grateful for this journey. Honestly, it's been a wonderful journey, and it's been my biggest lesson in so many ways.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think I'm with you on some of the on some of the reading. Like at one point, I even picked up a book on like cognitive behavioral therapy, like CBT. And I was like reading this, and you start seeing that not only is it a valuable tool for yourself, at least in my own experience, but I feel like it also helped me then better understand people that I was leading and managing, and then also our users. It helped me even reframe how I was thinking about understanding the real needs of those whose problems we were trying to solve to begin with. And so, yeah, it's the investment in self is so important, but I feel like it just has all these positive ripples when you can pull on those threads. But
100%.
I love it. Okay, well let's talk about the business side of this a little bit. So that was obviously like your own side. Um, when you then ultimately, you said like it really clicked with Seesaw, maybe retroactively, like looking back on that experience, what are some of the lessons that you've learned, or what's the feedback or coaching that you would give to another entrepreneur, like walking through those early stages of potential M&A? Like what are the things that um, really define like clicking? What made it feel like a good fit? What advice would you give to others if they are looking for a merger or acquisition? What are some of those, like on the business side of things? What are some of those things that you looked for that now, like a year later, you said, "Oh yeah, like because of that alignment, a year, 2 years ago, that's really paying big dividends for all of us now."
It's hard to generalize because I think every entrepreneur is different, every business is different, and every entrepreneur's like what they want out of the merger is different. For me, it was very important that there was cultural alignment. I mean, a culture alignment, not culture, like not, but culture alignment. It was very important to get the team's buy-in because I needed my product team to work with their product team. I needed my tech team to work with their tech team. So I needed to make sure that my team were also, we're aligned. We're one front, and we're in this all of us together. I think things that were important business wise, as a SaaS company, retention, unit economics. So make sure that these numbers are, are interesting, that they are exciting, and to really also, see how the combination, the merging can actually make both products a much stronger uh, uh, sell to the markets you're you're selling to.
And on that thread, did you find when you were going through the process, because earlier you said like businesses aren't bought, they're sold. Like on that thread of like, hey, our merger together is going to be more beneficial to everybody, and this is what it'll look like afterwards. Did you find that you were having to do a lot of that kind of envisioning and connecting the dots? Did Seesaw already kind of have that idea and you were filling in like a strategic gap in that operations? What was that like?
Yeah, they had the idea, but I think the more they got to know us, the more they got to know our products, the more they got to see our reach, our team, our boots on the ground. We started to really together visualize what can this look like, and how big can we become, and how are our products, how are they complementary, and how can we go and then approach the big clients like the government or the schools. How can we provide a holistic solution to some of the learning gaps they have at their schools and at their institutions. So yeah, we built it together. I feel we built it together.
Yeah. And especially in those early days, as you're like building together, right? Different working cultures, different working styles, American company, right? Jordan company. Um, how did you get to a place of like trust and shared vision that helped you like move through that? Any advice that you would give to entrepreneurs going through this stage to help them think about like these are some of these foundational collaboration pieces that you put in place in order to have a productive relationship?
For us, one of the things that has been really good, and I think we need to do more of it, is communication with the team in the US. So having regular touch points, the CEO always has town halls with us. So making sure that we're always aligned, we always know where the company is going. So we were not silos. We're not just executioners. We're actually part of building the company. We're part of innovation in the company. We now built Seesaw in Arabic. And so this has been very exciting. Our know-how has helped and is still shaping what it's looking like. So I think like sometimes when I've seen some of the acquisitions that happened, the office here just becomes a back office. It becomes like a tech office, and then all the decisions are made in the home country. We don't feel that. We feel we are part of the whole the culture, the product, the vision. We're part of it because they invested in us, not only as a service office, but as people who have local knowledge, it's a rooted company that's homegrown, and this has been very important for them. And I feel this is what helped, what's helping us, have a so far a smooth acquisition.
Yeah. Well, one question and I don't know if I'll word it correctly or if you feel comfortable answering it, but obviously when you're an entrepreneur, you have all this weight on your shoulders, right? Payroll, growth, your own future, your employees' livelihoods, all of the things. On the other side, a year later, just for you personally, like what's the biggest difference? Because now you're GM, right? Like, so in some ways, I imagine your impact, especially via Seesaw and Reach, is even more. But is the pressure higher? Is the pressure less? Like, what is life like on the other side of this?
For me, the pressure is much less. I think just worrying about fundraising, payroll, paying off loans. Because we had to, at some point, we had to take loans, we had to take impact-linked finance instruments, we had to take venture debt, we had to find different ways of being able to keep going and that's what an entrepreneur does. You are creative in finding ways to keep going if you really believe in what you're doing. And for me, that's a big relief because I don't want to focus on money, and I don't want to focus. I want to focus on creativity. I want to focus on growing. I want to focus on impact. I want to get the products into more places. I want to focus on innovation. And now with AI, we can provide more personalized learning and differentiated learning for students who have their own unique needs. And this is what excites me, and I'm so happy that now this is what I get to focus on.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Rama, time is flying. I feel like from the very beginning of your journey to the pivots in the middle to the acquisition here at the end to now your new leadership pathway, I feel like there's an episode on all of those threads. But as we get to the end here, at the end of every one of our episodes, we do a lightning impact round. So I ask, four kind of quick questions here, shorter questions, shorter responses. So would love to jump into those. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to share or say, before we get to this part.
I think you asked me about the book. I want to make sure I know the surrender. Hold on. Let me just find it.
Sure.
No, oh, it's called hold on. Yeah. I think the book that really, really helped me, and I go back to a lot, is called The Surrender Experiment. And it's written actually by Michael Singer, who is an entrepreneur,
right?
And his story, but it's also about his inner journey. And it's about balancing both. And for me, it has been a great book that I fall back on. But let's do the lightning
Cool.
round.
I will put that in the show notes. It's wonderful. Okay. Lightning impact round. Here we go. What is one mistake you've made that you really hope future entrepreneurs will not make?
Let go of people faster.
Tell me about your biggest challenge in fundraising, and what is one thing you want all impact investors to know?
Biggest challenge in fundraising was that investors were very much focused on revenue and bottom line versus double bottom line or triple bottom line.
Which, especially for our businesses, right? That double, that triple bottom line, that's what builds the long-term, partnerships and ability to then sell into examples like governments or big public institutions, which of course has very positive effect in the long term. What is one leadership or management skill that you wish you could turn on, and if you could, it would make you an even more effective leader?
Can I ask the question again?
Yeah, what is like a management or leadership skill that you wish you could embody or turn on that would make you a more effective team leader?
That's a tough one. I always thought it's having better operational and time and project management skills. But I'm also learning from Seesaw that being agile is also very important. So I'm still finding trying to find the middle ground between, you know, having very clear deliverables, deadlines, and also being agile in the approach.
When you figure that one out, we'll have you back on the show. So I have many more questions. And maybe you answered this already earlier, but what is a quote, ritual, or activity that you turn to for strength when things get super hard?
I think spending time alone. I think, and being in silence, just to let the noise go away. Because sometimes when there's so much anxiety and stress and people and internet and emails and conflict and tension, I just need to take a step back and just practice the pause and just try to calm myself down so that I can be able to make better decisions. So I think being quiet, being in silence, being alone is very important.
Yeah, that so resonates and so hard right now with tech, just everywhere, right? But I love that. Okay, and then who is another entrepreneur, especially like in the pre-show we were talking about other entrepreneurs like in the region. Who is an entrepreneur that you really admire, you've learned a lot from that you think we should invite on the show?
I think that's the thing I always struggle with. Like, what does impact mean? Because there are so many companies in the region who, maybe they have 500 employees or 1,000 employees, but they're building a gaming app. So is that considered impact? Is impact when you hire a lot of people and you're able to support, 1,000 people and you're able to support 1,000 families, but then what you're building is not solving a social pain that we have? I always struggle with what does impact mean. So you tell me, when you say impact, what is it that you want and that you're looking for?
Tell me a little bit more, and I know we're going to be tight on time here, but like even on that, from your own experience, like moving through that and having to kind of tell that impact story, and is it employment or is it impact? Is there anything that you found that what helps you navigate that question?
I think for me, impact is when you're solving a social problem, or not necessarily social. It could be, water, climate, environment, energy now. So, but problems that we're facing locally on a country level. But then I wonder, like, am I being judgy? Because you know what? Yes, this person is creating a game, but maybe by creating the game, he's also preventing kids from, doing drugs. I don't know. Maybe he's hiring 1,000 people, so he's creating jobs for 1,000 families. So I don't know. My definition of impact is when you're solving a problem that exists in your country or in your region or globally. Even, it doesn't have to be country specific.
Yeah.
But I just feel, because we come from a region that has a lot of issues and we also have a lot of creative people. So why don't we focus our efforts and money on solving problems that we have?
Yeah. I know that's what we look at for this show as, and there's different frameworks and some of them all have their own, criticisms. But if something is advancing towards the sustainable development goals and the organization is measuring its progress towards those, right? That's kind of what we say is the first pillar. And then on the second pillar, and his pieces that you hit on as well as, and in the pursuit of that social or environmental impact, there's also deep care for your own communities and employees and partners, right? And so it's both our business model exists for good, and also our own internal operations are being managed to negate any negative externalities. But it's
I think also you talk about people. Like, for me, one of the things I struggled with is, how do you hold people accountable? We're an organization of 80 people and we care about the people. So it's also how to navigate, being a leader and a forceful leader, but also being a conscious leader and being a human leader. And I think this has been part of my journey.
Yeah, there's so much tension there. Well, last question. Where can we follow you? How can we help support you on the incredible work that you're doing?
You can find us on Instagram or LinkedIn, either Seesaw or Little Thinking Minds. So that would be the best way.
Perfect. We'll add that to the show notes. Rama, it was so lovely to have you here. Congrats on everything that you've accomplished. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights on the show. Really, really grateful for everything that you've done and for all that you've shared. It was really a pleasure having you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Great. Bye, Rama.